Welcome to Sisters in Crime's Murder Monday, where authors talk about their crime craft. My name is Jacq, and I'm a bibliophile, copywriter, occasional broadcaster, podcaster, and member of Sisters in Crime Australia, where we've been celebrating women's crime writing since 1991. My guest for this month's Murder Monday is Liz Evans, journalist, psychotherapist, researcher, teacher, academic, and luckily for us, a debut crime author. Hey, Liz, how are you going?
I'm good, thanks, Jacq. How are you?
I'm good. Liz is currently based on unceded Malakadi land in Lutruwita, which is Tasmania. She has written for NME, The Guardian. I'm going to take a deep breath here because the list is long. New Statesman, Elle, Island Magazine, Womankind, The Conversation, to name just a few. She's also been awarded 2 Verena Residential Fellowships and the Catherine Susanna Pritchard Fellowship, as well as an Arts Tasmania grant for an education residency. And her debut novel is the wonderfully titled Catherine Wheel. Liz is a regular contributor to the Bookish Slot on ABC Radio Hobart, reviews novels for The Conversation. And Liz, could you give us an elevator pitch for Catherine Wheel, which is out now in our favourite bookstores and library?
Yes, I actually heard a brilliant term on the podcast this morning. The term I haven't heard before is compeller, and this was coined by Elizabeth Day, who wrote Magpie, which was described as a psychological thriller, but she didn't really feel it was. So I'm kind of stealing that phrase, compeller. My book is a psychological suspense novel. It doesn't have the usual crimey sort of tropes of thrillers, but it has the propulsion of a thriller. And it's essentially about 2 women who are impacted by coercive control, issues surrounding motherhood and trust within female friendships. It's set against a backdrop of ancient mysteries and long-buried tragedy in the UK.
And I think compeller is a brilliant word. I don't know who was the podcast? Who grabbed that name for you? Because
it's quite a new podcast. It's produced by Elizabeth Day. I think it's her podcast production. And it's the amazing author Sarah Collins, who wrote The Confessions of Franny Langton, with one of the most brilliant agents, Nellie Andrew, and an amazing publisher. I think it's Charmaine Lovegrove. It's called How to Write a Book, and it's absolutely brilliant.
It's fantastic because it is a compeller, because you start reading and you're just like, oh, this is a little bit uncomfortable, and then why am I uncomfortable? Why reading this? And then all of a sudden you're just like, oh, this is so different. But we need to get to our questions. So the first question, straight off the bat for you: why do you think crime as an umbrella genre is so appealing?
I think everyone loves solving a problem. I think it also takes us to the edge of ourselves. You know, we are all capable of everything that's ever been committed or done by humankind, all of us. We like to think we're not, but we are.
Yeah.
And I think when we read crime, we get taken to those edges of ourselves that we're not so consciously in touch with. We like to think this is other people doing it, but we can kind of live vicariously, I think, through characters in crime novels. I haven't written a crime novel, but I know what you mean as an umbrella term. I just think it takes us, for me, you know, psychological thrillers take me into pockets of the psyche which I haven't really acted out on, but you know, I guess that's what I find intriguing. Like how far can we go as humans? Yeah.
Does it hold sort of like a fascination in how dark we can be?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I trained as a psychotherapist. You know, I don't think you get into psychotherapy because you want a nice, happy life in living in denial. I mean, you definitely get into it because you're curious about humanity.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't even like the term dark for lots and lots of reasons. But for me, those parts of ourselves, they are less conscious, they're more interesting. Sometimes they can mobilize us, they can take us into, you know, parts of ourselves that enable growth. It just depends what we do with them. But I like to explore that, I think, in my fiction as I'm learning. Yeah.
The next question. Are you part of a writers group, and how important is that?
No, I'm not. I'm very much a lone wolf in terms of my writing. I guess I've always written by myself. I've been writing for 36 years now.
Yeah.
So I've loosely been connected with communities. When I was a journalist, I would go into magazines, I would hang out with people, but I'd go home and write by myself. As a PhD student, I had a community of other PhD students, but I didn't really see a lot of them because I was one of the few here who had kids. So when I came in, it was usually at weekends or holidays. I know other writers, but I think what I'm doing here in Tasmania, apart from maybe Jo Dixon, is a bit different. There's a lot of people doing environmental stuff here. Or Lucy Christopher actually is a good friend and a colleague, and her last book, Stolen, was remarkable, extremely psychological. And we have plans to do writing things together. So that could be good. Yeah. Just, maybe just hang out, talk, but we've got some research on this as well. Yeah, but I don't really need the community. I think I'm very happy writing on my own. Quite like it.
How do you cope with knowing some of the things you research?
Oh, I think it doesn't really even compare to the things I discovered as a psychotherapist. And those weren't dreadful things. They were just, well, actually some of them were dreadful things in terms of people's experiences, not what people were doing, but what had been done to them. There's nothing like real life, so, but I didn't use that as research for the novel. I need to say that. I need to make that extremely clear. I was extremely boundaried as a practitioner. That was one of my most important ethical considerations. Yeah, I mean, I'm not really writing about crime or the more kind of psychopathic stuff that I've actually been quite critical of in my research as an academic. I guess I'm writing about, things that I feel are more relatable. They're sort of things that can get blown out of proportion, or, parts of the psyche where we lose perspective. And I think we're all in that kind of boat, really, from time to time.
Now, in your career of 36 years, and this is writing, this is pretty much absolutely everything encompassed. What is the hardest thing that you've had to write about? That you can tell us, of course, within those ethical boundaries.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can't think of anything that's been really difficult. The academic work's hard because I think academic work is hardest because you sort of go into an odd place where you think you've done it, and then you realize that you haven't, and it all kind of disassembles, and then you kind of feel like you're going mad, and then you get to this place where you're right at the edge, for me anyway. Where, so I should say me, where I think I'm not going to manage it, I'm not going to get it done, and then something shifts, and then I just write, and it's done, and I don't even know how it happens. And that happened for my master's thesis, which I published in the end, and most of the papers I've written, and I think at some point my exegesis. But journalism and the novel, actually, I haven't found it difficult in that way at all.
And how do you find changing the language that you use, sort of like academic language, as opposed to something like fiction?
It was actually surprisingly okay.
Yeah, it was like easy transition, or?
Well, yeah, I mean, sort of. I think when I first started the PhD, same as when I started my master's, I'd been a long time out of education. So getting into the master's, which I did in 2001 to 2003, I had to sort of get used to that kind of academic language again. Same when I did the exegesis, because I'd been out of it for a while. But I don't know why. There was something quite, I don't know if easy is the word, but I didn't find it hard. And I think writing the fiction was so pleasurable, so enjoyable, that I set it up before I got the PhD. I'd already got 10,000 words under my belt. And it just felt so sort of indulgent, even though, sometimes it was quite hard. But then I think I would do it in chunks, maybe. And then I'd go back. I knew I'd get a chunk done. And then I knew I've got to get back to a chunk for the exegesis, because my supervisor wants it. So it wasn't difficult, weirdly.
Do you think, and again, we're using crime as a as an umbrella term because in Australian bookstores and libraries, that's where everything is stuck. Do
Yeah.
you think women write different stories to men?
Um, I don't read that many men, actually. Um, Partly, I think I've just always been drawn to women writers,
Mhm.
and the subject matter interests me more. I'm more interested in the female narrators, female protagonists. So in some ways, I don't know if I can answer that question, but I would say from what I have read,
Yeah.
probably yes. I feel like women tend to go into the psychological stuff a little bit more. It might be a little bit less hard-boiled, a bit less car chasey, a bit less sort of high octane thrills. That's not to say women don't do those, and I'm very, very careful not to get too divisive about gender stuff
Yeah.
because I think this stuff is mainly cultural, it's mainly social. We know that the female brain and the male brain are not
Mhm.
different. That's made up. Um, but I think the socio-cultural stuff does kind of have quite an impact on the
Yeah.
sorts of themes and the sorts of narratives that women want to explore. It's a generalization.
No, it's great. It's great. How important is place in your writing? Now, I know it's fairly important because I've read the book, but for those who haven't yet, how important is place?
Well, it turned out to be surprisingly important in Catherine Wheel. And actually, I have researched eco-psychology, which looks at the relationship between humanity and nature and plays a huge part in that field of
Mhm.
research. I'm actually giving a paper about place and psyche later in the year at a conference at UTAS. So it was kind of obvious in some ways that I would write about place. And it really was so intrinsic to my childhood and my upbringing because I grew up in England, in the countryside. We spent childhoods going to burial mounds and Stonehenge and these incredibly
Yeah.
beautiful old ancient places, haunted chapels. And when I went to St. Catherine's Chapel earlier this year, it just blew my mind. It's a lot more peaceful than the one I mean, it's based on the one the one I've written in the book is based on the real one, but I've made it a bit more spooky. It's not
Mhm.
spooky in real life. But I did go to spooky old chapels as a kid. And I think place is really important. So I will be consciously working with place
Yeah.
more now in my second novel. Yeah.
Well, now that's really exciting because there's another one. Uh, what's your top writing tip?
Oh my goodness.
And it
Don't
doesn't have to be for fiction. It can be for anything.
I think don't romanticize writing. If you want to write, you need to understand it will entail an awful lot of work. It will
Mm.
entail sacrifice. It's not like sitting back waiting for the muse. It's not about lunching at launches. It's not about appearing on festival panels. It's about being by yourself in your pajamas without showering, and possibly you're there for hours and maybe something, you've written a paragraph. You will have days like that. There'll be other days where you write a lot, but it really is really hard work, and it's not for people who are in any way fantasizing the life of being a writer, because you just won't get it done.
And following on from that, what is your writing routine? Do you have one?
Well, not particularly. I mean, I just sit down and write. I do need to sort of make sure that I've had coffee in the morning. I do
Yeah.
like to start work reasonably early. But if a day dictates that I can't for whatever reason, then I'll, just get through it when I can.
Yeah.
Um, I used to, before I had kids, start at 10, write till about 2. And then if I wasn't going out, which I usually was, I'd write till about 2 in the morning. But since having a family, I've just been a bit more flexible. So I do treat it like work. And yeah, I just like to get, a few hours. I mean, 4 hours is a kind of good limit for really hard, properly focused work.
Hmm.
4 hours is a really good um, time amount of time.
Yeah. How much of you is in your characters?
Well, I think that's a really interesting question. It's, I don't know. I mean, I'm careful with those sorts of questions because I know that traditionally they tend to be asked more of women writers than male writers. And I heard this brilliant stock reply from an author who said, does anyone ever ask Ian McEwan about erectile dysfunction? Probably not, you know. So, I mean, I guess we, you know, bits of ourselves are in everything we do, whether you're doing a piece of art or a piece of writing. I mean, there's probably little bits of me in there, but I'm certainly not writing about myself. It's not autobiographical. I have a good imagination. And I think, you know, we kind of, lots of other things feed into our writing, including what we read, people that we've met, and it all kind of goes into a big mishmash. And the beauty of writing is that you have that opportunity to imagine and to sort of stretch out into other territories.
How important is connecting on social media or through newsletters with your readers?
I have really enjoyed that. I mean, I'm not, I guess because I've been writing for such a long time, the publishing landscape was very, very different when I started, and you didn't have to go out and sort of, you know, drive your work. There wasn't such a the internet, so you just basically wrote your book and hoped for a review. And it is quite different now, but it is really nice. I mean, I have to say, I really enjoy connecting with other writers as well. I think this is kind of new to me because, you know, I'm so old and I've been doing it for so long, but I am really enjoying it. And I really enjoyed meeting other writers through the internet. I've met some in real life as well. And honestly, I mean, the biggest hope you can have for your book is that it will be read. So when that's coming, you know, that feedback coming back through readers is absolutely fantastic.
How many drafts do you do before handing it in?
I don't know really, because I tend to edit as I work. So I won't let anyone see anything until I think it's what I would be judged to be almost fit for publication.
Yeah.
Because I've also been an editor as well as a journalist and an author in the past. So I edit as I write. So actually, by the time I got this handed in to my agent and then to the publisher, I didn't ever really have to do a big structural edit at any point. It was line editing. But there were several permutations because the first iteration of this novel was for the PhD.
Yeah.
And that meant it was a little bit different. It was shorter. It actually had a different ending. And then when I went, you know, to sort of make it longer for publication, I had this extra 10,000 words to kind of expand into. And I just decided to change the ending.
Well, it's a brilliant ending. I don't actually see how it could have ended any differently.
No, it was quite different.
Wow.
And I mean, I did quite like the other ending, but then because I have this extra word count, I thought I'm just going to do something different. And when I think about the objectives I had for the novel as well, it makes more sense to have the ending as it is now. And I am, when I got the idea for the current ending, I was like, oh yes, now I know what I'm going to do. And it was very satisfying.
What have we got? Oh, what is the hardest thing about being a writer?
I'm not getting paid properly. You know, it's true. Most writers have day jobs. You don't get paid properly. You just don't. And that's just you know, that's just part of the deal. So if you're going to write, unless you're, I don't know, Paula Hawkins or Colleen Hoover, you are probably going to have to fit it in around other things.
Well, I know even as a copywriter, we're not paid properly, so it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I've earned a living as a journalist. I've earned a living as an editor. I've earned a living as an academic. But I think, you know, if you're just going to sit down and write a novel, you probably aren't going to manage that unless you've got some other kind of family support.
Yeah. And what started you down this line of the Catherine Wheel?
Oh, I think it was a mixture of things. I have been a voracious reader for a long time. I've always loved psychological suspense fiction. I used to love writers like Helen Dunmore, Erin Kelly, Harriet Lane, Kate Hamer. who are far more psychological. They're not crime. Well, there's a little bit of crime in Erin Kelly,
Yeah.
but much more psychological, intriguing, suspenseful novels. And then after Gone Girl came out, I started coming across a lot more tropey, stereotypical thrillers, and
Yeah.
you know, lots and lots of women who are represented as homicidal or psychopathological. They couldn't, you know, women were not angry in these books unless they were homicidal or psychopathological. And as a psychotherapist who mainly treated female clients, I knew that was a little bit of a misrepresentation. I also feel, as a feminist, it's very important for women to be able to be seen to be angry without being told we're menopausal or we're hormonal, we've got a bloody period or whatever the hell, you know, like, no, we're just angry because you've made me angry, or, you know, like something very justifiable.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to explore that in this kind of novel. Those are my clear objectives, and that was a big driver to get started.
Wow. Okay, well, we're actually almost out of time, so I've got time for one more question, the last question. Lastly, how would you get away with murder?
Me, I don't know. I probably shouldn't say, 'cause, you know, I don't want to alert anyone. I don't know. I mean, I've never properly wanted to. I don't know how I would do it. I think though, perhaps poisoning is a good one. You know, there are things that don't get detected. I mean, I think people give too much away, don't they, in crime novels now? With their forensics. He's like, oh yeah, that's not a bad idea. Or just go back to the old days, you know, when women really knew which berries to pick.
Yeah. Oh, Liz, thank you so much. We're wishing you all the best for Catherine Wheel. It is incredible, people. So head out to your favorite bookstore or your library and pick up a copy. It might make you uncomfortable at the beginning, but that ending's a real corker. Murder Monday interviews are available on Sisters in Crime's YouTube channel at 6 p.m. once a month on a Monday. Liz, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jacq. It's been really good fun.